Blog Talk Radio.
Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot, oh my. It's just another night for Supernatural Girls. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Here's your host, paranormal researcher Patricia Baker, on the one, the only, Supernatural Girls.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Supernatural Girls Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker, and unfortunately, PK was unable to join us again this evening, but she should be back next week, but she's going to miss a great show, because let me tell you what, this is a very special show. Now, I announced quite some time ago, probably a couple of years ago, that I had requested that a very, very interesting person, Covert Disclosure, he was on Twitter, and I noticed that he was posting some very, very interesting posts. Covert Disclosure 441, you need to follow him on Twitter. So anyways, who is he? Well, he identifies himself as being stationed at a certain government facility for years. And he has seen things of extraterrestrial and paranormal nature, and he felt that the public needs to be made aware. So he was kind enough to take all of the questions that we had asked. Again, this is a couple of years ago, but at that time we were very much focused on the people that had gone missing, and that had been identified very, very clearly by David Paulides, who has done just incredible work. He's an ex-detective. He took this on to research why people were disappearing in our national parks and other places under very mysterious circumstances. Now, if you haven't read his books, you need to, because he's done a great job with the books. There's also 2 documentaries that were produced, one by his son and him, and the second one, I don't know who the producer was, but both of them you need to see, and also get his books. Now, don't go to Amazon to buy David's books. Buy them directly from him. It's the Can-Am Missing 411 project. You can find him online. Buy the books directly from him, because there's people that are price gouging like you can't believe on Amazon. So don't buy his books there. But David has our utmost respect as a professional. He's a great investigator. He never speculates on who or what is taking these people and why, but he does present the cases. He identifies the people. He talks about the circumstances. It is a fascinating study. It has really caught my attention for such a long time, and it's also very disturbing, because the national parks, as he has gone into in great detail, don't even want to reveal a list of all these people that have gone missing. And when David has gone to get reports, they have often refused to give the reports, when this clearly should be something anyone can get. So I know that George Lugo and Becky Andreasen and myself all looked into some of this when we did mediumship together, and we found some very, very interesting and some very concerning things as we did this work. And I did talk about some of that during the shows throughout the last couple of years. Now, Covert Disclosure, as I mentioned, he does not want to be identified. And he did take his own time and read through the questions we asked, and he answered all of them. So I have sound files, and what's going to happen is I'm going to read the question that I asked, and I'm going to play his response. Now, also, I have a very special person with us tonight Now, Tom Dongo is a friend of ours. He's been on the show previously, and he's joining us to discuss these paranormal events and what is behind them. Now, Tom, as you may recall, is recognized as a world authority and one of the United States' leading authorities on UFOs and paranormal occurrences. He is also a remote viewer, and over the course of many years has been a key lecturer at numerous U.S. national and international conferences, including the International UFO Conference. So, Tom, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Yeah, it's great to be back, Patricia. Appreciate it. Yeah, we'll have fun with this one tonight.
Oh my God, I know. Because you've done a lot of remote viewing on this, and we definitely want to hear what Covert Disclosure has to say. And again, that's Covert Disclosure 441. If you are looking for him on Twitter, that's where you will find him. Be sure to go and follow him, and make sure you're following us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and all these great places, because we are all over the place. And don't miss it, because we're going to be doing some even more exciting stuff if that's possible. So I want to start this off because, again, Covert Disclosure is really needing to be very careful. He does not want anybody to know who he is. So he has taken his time to answer these questions. And before I read any of them, here is what he had to say.
Before reading my replies, please remain aware that I cannot divulge anything too specific, as that would increase my chances of being identified by rank, function, or facility. I don't want you to think I'm being evasive, just for the sake of being evasive. It's quite literally a matter of life and death.
Okay, so if you had any trouble understanding that with the voice synthesizer, let me read his response. Before reading my replies, please remain aware that I cannot divulge anything too specific, as that would increase my chances of being identified by rank, function, or facility. I don't want you to think I'm being evasive. It's quite literally a matter of life or death. So, with that, we're going to start with the first question. Now, as I just mentioned, Police Detective David Paulides has investigated many unusual disappearances in our national parks and, in some cases, near college campuses and cities. Now, there seem to be several possibilities. Here's my question. What do you know about this? It appears that there may be several forces at work. Is it UFO abduction? If so, why are they taking these people? So I'm going to play his response.
The disappearances are partially due to extraterrestrial activity. When it comes to most extraterrestrials, they are taking humans for experimentation, slavery, or a combination thereof. There is a percentage of extraterrestrials that take humans for food. However, that percentage is fairly low.
Wow. So, Tom, I know you have been looking into this as well. Have you found extraterrestrials involved in abducting these people?
That's a good question. I just told you I've been on 54. This is the 54th show I've been on in a year and a half. I talk about that a lot, and I have a natural remote viewing ability, and I've questions, like what the answer is what he said. I do my own research without influenced by anybody else. So I just recently listened to an Art Bell interview of Ingo Swann and Russell Targ, and they're the people that remote viewing in the United States. In fact, I know some of the original remote viewers that they trained, and I can do what both of those guys can do in remote viewing. But I certainly don't have the energy that Swan had. He could walk into a building and shut down every electronic thing in the building. I sure can't do that. But
yeah, Ingo is amazing. But there are several possibilities, and this is why I put this question to Covert Disclosure, because these people that go missing, they do follow a pattern. However, this is something I do think he's accurate in his answer. I would go along with this. I think that there are a number of reasons why they would take people, and experimentation very, very well could be one of them. Slavery, I could see that happening, or a combination of that. And then food is concerning, obviously, but he said that is a lower percentage. So let's go to the next question that I asked, and I also asked him who else it could be. So is it Bigfoot or cryptids doing the kidnapping? If so, what are these cryptids doing to humans? Which cryptids are involved with this? I'm going to play his answer first, and then we're going to talk about that. So here we go.
Cryptids are also to blame for these disappearances, but to a lesser degree. With cryptids, the motivation is almost always food, but in some very chilling cases, they also abduct people for torture or assault, or even for pets.
Yikes. So there have been a number of children that have gone missing. And I remember one story that David talked about, a little girl. And this is a long time ago, back in the 1800s. And she described a man, or actually she described something with a wolf face. And so they recovered her, thank goodness. But, yeah, you have to wonder, why would a cryptid take a human? And, again, these answers sound very, very accurate to me. Motivation being food, and in some cases, and this is horrible to think about, abducting people for torture, assault, or even as pets. We know so little about the tribes of Bigfoot and other cryptids that are out there. It's certainly not just Bigfoot. There are many other cryptids, and I know Covert Disclosure has referenced several of them in his Twitter posts, and some I've never even heard of. So again, everybody, make sure you're following him on Twitter, because there's a lot to learn from him about these different cryptids out there. So what have you found, Tom, about cryptids when you have looked into this?
Well, yeah, good question. Dogman is definitely a threat, but and dogmen have killed people, but they're and dogmen are basically everywhere. They are werewolves, and if a creature, they think it's a Bigfoot, and their eyes glow orange or red, they're not a Bigfoot. It's a dogman, because dogman at night, their eyes glow red or orange. So the whole this thing about people being tortured and kept as pets and all that, I've really looked into that. I have an ex-friend in the CIA that I shouldn't mention his name at all, but if extraterrestrials, we could go on all night with this question. If extraterrestrials are involved in this anyway, they're doing it through humans, because what humans have been doing to humans, they're eating kids, they're drinking kids' blood, they're keeping kids as pets, slaves, So if that's a fact, I don't think extraterrestrials are directly doing that, but if they are, they're doing it through humans, There's a lot of people on this planet that they've killed many people and have no guilt about it whatsoever. I mean, I could name a half a dozen people now that fully active doing this. So
yes, I'm aware of what you're talking about. Definitely. I mean, there's a lot of people that have reported on that, and there's no doubt that unfortunately there's a lot of human trafficking, child trafficking going on. But again, it's interesting that there's definitely more than one cryptid, like you mentioned, Dogman, and certainly that sounds like what the little girl was describing, who was recovered, who was taken miles away, but thank God they found her. So, anyways, this is a very concerning topic, as I said at the beginning of the show. It keeps me awake at night. It really does, wondering what has happened to these people.
Me too.
Now, here's another question I asked, because in my mind, there's several different possibilities. It's not just cryptids. It's not just ETs. My next question was this. Are interdimensionals kidnapping humans, and if so, why? So I'm going to play his response.
There is at least one interdimensional race that is kidnapping humans. As far as we can ascertain, They are taking humans for food. When it comes to interdimensional beings taking humans, they're not really limited to state or federal land. The race I have in mind, honestly, more than likely have no idea of our man-made boundaries.
So that's interesting because he's going to answer another question later on about how cryptids do follow certain boundaries of land, but interdimensional do not. So that makes sense. I have to say, I can understand why interdimensionals wouldn't recognize our boundaries, man-made boundaries. It would mean nothing to them coming from another dimension. It really bothers me, however, that they're taking humans for food. That is really kind of disgusting. But, again, we eat animals. And, you know, like you said, there are people that are trafficking children who are doing something similar. So maybe I shouldn't be so shocked, but I am. So what about your looking into interdimensionals? Have you encountered any races of interdimensionals coming into our reality?
So, you know, I was on a show a couple of months ago, and he says, yeah, they're eating the stupid ones first, you know. So, you know, we kind of made a joke about that. But, yeah, I'm aware of, you know, the thing of it is I wish I could spend the rest of my life teaching people remote viewing, because I've been face-to-face with the nastiest of the nastiest. And if you can see them, they respect you. There's some reason they respect you. I intentionally went looking for the worst the bad guys, right? Mm-hmm. So I intentionally went looking one time for the worst extraterrestrial I could find. And I'll tell you a story about Joe McMonagle a little bit. So anyway, you know, I did. I came face to face, and the bad ones are they're all humanoids. The humans, extraterrestrials, there are about 15 races of human extraterrestrials that I've been able to find. So anyway,
but how do you tell? Let me just ask you this, Tom, because you're talking about interdimensionals right now. How do you tell the difference when you start looking into this between an interdimensional and an alien? I mean, I would imagine it's somewhat tricky to identify who's who.
Well, you know, it is and it isn't. You know, I have been able to speak to extraterrestrials in the past, and an extraterrestrial that, you know, flies a ship, they speak in a language. It's a language. It's telepathic, but it's in pictures. It's like it's an instantaneous picture.
But what
language
about interdimensionals?
Well,
do the interdimensionals do that too?
Yeah, you know, I don't know, because the interdimension, very very strange, you know. And here's the thing. You know, we need, you know, we're trapped in limbo, us humans, because we don't see beyond the limits. And I try to do that. I try to go into the outer limits. If we could see what was around us, it probably would be a little scary. But we need to. You know, Charles Fort was right in 1921. We are somebody's herd of cattle. I've got that taken for granted. We are somebody's herd of cattle.
Why wouldn't we also be on the food chain? Right. And I know Bob Monroe used to say that. We're on the food chain, too. Yeah. So, yeah, you know, that definitely makes sense. So let me move on to the next question. Yeah. And this is number 4 that I asked, a covert disclosure. Are these people accidentally falling through a portal and transported to another dimension, and has anyone ever returned? Now, here is his answer. Very interesting answer.
There are a number of what I'll refer to as remnant portals that pose a danger to the general public. If left as is, and if it's in a public enough location, the probability of someone or something falling through and drawing unwanted attention to the area is high enough that it merits what's called an intervention mission. These intervention missions are basically what people describe when they say that the military showed up and no one knew why. Oftentimes, we can't close the portals and basically just have to stand watch and make sure no one falls through. Other times, the portals close themselves and the military just stands guard during the duration. Now, we have had some people return, but their accounts are almost always worthless due to the other dimension being beyond
I find that answer very interesting. We've done a lot of looking into portals. We've had a lot of people on the show talking about portals, including Patrice Chaplin, Jerry Wills, some people that have had personal experiences with them, as also somebody who worked with Bigfoot and saw Bigfoot coming through portals. So portals are key, it appears. And what have you found with portals, Tom?
Well, I would hardly disagree with anything he said. I got teleported about 4 years ago now. I do treasure hunting on the side, and we were in a very remote place at 8,000 feet, and I was carrying metal detectors and shovels, and I was walking through a lot of leaves, and I looked down, and I brought my head up, and I was in another canyon. I was in another canyon about a quarter of a mile away, and it happened that fast. Bobby, a split second. So either somebody did that to me, we were in Apache homeland, the original Apache homeland. So, somebody said, well, maybe it was an Apache shaman. Well, it may have been. I don't know, or an extraterrestrial. But somebody, I know it wasn't me, somebody teleported me a quarter of a mile in a probably 100th of a second. It was as fast as you can blink your eye. And I had a heck of a time getting back because I had all these shovels and metal detectors in my arms.
Oh my goodness!
So I know what So I know what it's like, and I've seen. Go ahead.
Yeah, and the thing is this: there are natural portals, and then there are man-made portals. And I know Patrice Chaplin, when she was on the show, she told us about a phone call that she received from someone at NASA. And it really took her by surprise because this gentleman called her up and said, I'm with NASA, and we are looking for portals that are man-made because we need to shut them down. Yes. And she said, I can't help you.
I've heard that.
I don't. Yeah, because she said, I don't know about any of the man-made ones. I only know about the natural ones. But it was a fascinating conversation about this, that NASA was interested in shutting those portals down, the man-made ones. I don't think that they can shut down the natural ones, but as he mentions, as Covert Disclosure mentions, they do, when they're identified, they guard them to make sure nobody else falls through, which is, I guess, a really good thing, because it would be a difficult journey falling through those portals. Because you have to wonder, even with your experience, if you just happened to step through a portal, that also could have happened rather than somebody transporting you. Because Geronimo, in that area, he used to travel through portals. It was very well known that Geronimo was a portal traveler, and he would get far, far away within the blink of an eye. And he was known for that, with the portals in that part of the country. So very, very fascinating. Okay, so here's another question I asked. Why are some of the missing found without shoes? Because that's a big piece of this. And sometimes missing clothing. So here is his answer to that.
Depending on the mechanics involved with disappearing or reappearing, it can happen so swiftly that clothes are torn and looser items such as shoes, hats, and even wigs or toupees will come off.
And that makes sense. If they're going to be taken by an ET, they might just be walking 1 minute and swooped up the next minute. And you could see how they would come out of their shoes. Or if they were taken by a cryptid underground, again, it would be a very swift kidnapping. I would imagine it would happen very, very quickly. And pieces of clothing could be torn or whatever. So that makes sense. Here's another question I asked him. Why does bad weather move into the area when they start searching for the missing? As you know, weather events are a big piece of David Paulides' work. He has found many different weather events that take place when these people go missing, and the search parties are out, and they have to stop the search because the weather gets bad, whether it's snow or rain or wind or whatever. Here's the answer.
Cases where the missing person or persons have been abducted by cryptids, the bad weather's coincidental. It's when the abductees are taken by extraterrestrials that you see 90% of the bad weather be fabricated. In some cases of bad weather or even better weather can occur in cases of interdimensional portals being opened that are large enough to affect atmospheric pressure and other factors.
I think that's a great answer. It makes sense that it's not generated by cryptids, but it would be generated either by government or by extraterrestrials. They both have the technology to do that. So very interesting. And certainly this bad weather does hinder search parties in a major way. So.
Well, you know, there was that forest ranger here in Sedona. There's a guy writing a book about him now, and he wanted to know everything I knew about it. And I said, well, it's all in my book. One of my books, I wrote all about it, his name and everything. But he walked into Secret Canyon, never came out. He was a very experienced survivalist. He could survive anywhere. So he walked into Secret Canyon, which is only about 2 miles from Sedona, and never came out. They looked for him with bloodhounds, horses, helicopters, on foot, you name it. They never found a trace of him. By now, it's been about 10 years. They would have found his bones or his a backpack or some part of his clothing, you know, up on a up.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. But they never have. And there are people that go. Those side canyons are brutal, but there's people that go. You know, younger people that go bushwhacking up there, and they would have found him by now. So what happened to him? He saw something that they couldn't let him go. Either that or he walked into a portal, because Secret Canyon, you know, for years I spent on Secret Canyon, and it's a weird place. They were extraterrestrial activity was seen almost continuously, and no human. So they had holographic openings into the ground, and it looked like a bunch of bushes or a cliff, but there was actually an opening there, and because they were somebody was drilling a tunnel, a big one, and almost all of the world's UFO activity happened on Secret Mountain and Secret Canyon at the same time, you know, during that time, and then it all burned. And Chet Snow, he was a famous writer, you know, for this stuff. Chet found out that the fire departments around here were ordered not to put the fires out in Secret Canyon and Secret Mountains. They burned, and since that day, there's been zero UFO, where it was the world center for UFO activity, the most intense UFO activity in the world, is now zero, and I mean nothing happens there anymore. So the government wanted something to burn, because forest fire smoke only burns in black, you know, cream, off-colored white, but they were colored red, orange, you know, different colors coming off Secret Mountain. So something burned up there, but nobody knows what it is. So the fire burned all the way back to the Colorado Plateau, and then they put it out. So and extraterrestrials were seeing it. Yeah.
Yeah, and what you're saying, again, it just, again, points us all in the direction that we've been in for a long time, knowing that the government knows all about this. They just don't want to tell us. That stupid report that they did, it was just nothing. I mean, they absolutely know.
Yeah, that was an insult. To anybody,
it was an insult.
To anybody's got it, to anybody's got any knowledge, that was an insult. I knew that was coming, because years back, I already knew what they knew, and they give us that crap. You know, it was an insult. That's all.
It was. I so agree with you, Tom. That's true. Well, here's another question. Yeah. Why can't the bloodhounds find a scent? Here is Covert Disclosure's answer.
Most of the time they can get a scent. It's just that when a subterranean cryptid takes a person, they take them well below ground, far exceeding the scent threshold that a bloodhound can pick up. When an extraterrestrial takes a person, you can imagine that they're literally just snatched up from right where they're standing. In cases like that, the scent just seems to vanish, and the same goes with interdimensionals. Even when there are no paranormal factors involved with the disappearance, something so simple as walking through a stream or river can erase your scent if you stay in the river long enough and come up on a shore a far enough distance away.
Again, that makes a lot of sense to me. That's why they can't find a scent. Yeah, somebody's scooped up right into the air or down deep into the earth. Absolutely, the scent goes away.
Yeah.
So very hard for these well-trained bloodhounds to find the scent beyond that. And David also has talked about this in his books and in his films, where the dogs will just all of a sudden lie down, or they'll walk in circles, but you can see that they can't go any further. They just don't know where to go. So, okay, here's another question. When people are in the woods prior to a person going missing, they have described that the whole area goes dead. No wildlife sounds, nothing. Why is that? Is the magnetic field collapsing? Is that what allows other creatures to come through? Now, he had a very short answer to this one.
The factors for this can vary pretty widely.
And that's it. So the factors can vary for why there's no sound. Now, you've heard of this, and I'm sure you've experienced it, Tom, how everything goes quiet. What's your take on that?
Well, let me tell you something. I mean, I'm always going, why me? You know, if you read my books, I have some weird stuff that have happened to me in most of it. And most of it was witnessed by somebody else. But when everything goes quiet, something is scaring the hell out of the birds and the animals or whatever. There's something there that's scaring them. I had something happen to me once. I've camped all over North America with other people or with myself, but there was one time I was camped on the Colorado Plateau, and I've been thinking about this often lately, and I'm not really sure why. But I woke up in the middle of the night one night, and it was dead quiet. It was probably about 11 o'clock or so, I guess. And it was a ponderosa pine forest, and it was lit up as far as I can see in all directions, but there was no single source of light. It was just lit up and dead quiet. No breeze, no insects, nothing. So I saw something coming through. It was about the size of a bear, black, and it was about 30 feet off the ground. And it stuck to a tree just above me, about 40 feet above me, and it just stuck there. So I'm looking at this thing, and I'm going, oh man, this, what else? So I just watched it. It didn't move or anything, but the Yakima Indians in Washington have got endless stories about stuff like this that I've heard. The Indians. I'll just mention this briefly, but. I have a lot of high-level Indian friends, and they know stuff. They're not telling us. They won't. They've got a good reason for not liking white folks, being real suspicious of us. And they've got a good reason.
Definitely.
But they know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they know. Yeah, they know things. They know things. That I have Apache friends, very high-level Apache friends. And we get talking, and they can tell that they can trust me, so they tell me things, that's happened, and they're not lying. They're not lying. They'll tell me stories about, what's happened with them and what happened on the reservation, and I guess especially the Navajos. I spent a couple of years working with the Navajos, and then I went broke.
Let's get back to this thing that you saw, because it sounds a lot like what people have described. It's almost like right out of the movie Predator, where you can see something moving through the trees. Yep. And this has been described by a number of witnesses. They don't know what it is, but everything has gone quiet, and they get a really bad feeling. And then this thing starts moving through the trees, but it is like something out of Predator, that movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger. So there does seem to be something that is a predator, and perhaps that's what you saw. But it's, again, it goes hand in hand with this silence, this overwhelming silence that people experience. No animal noises, no wind, no anything. But I keep thinking that it must have to do with the magnetic collapse of the field, because it just goes beyond that everything moves away, the birds and everything go away. I think it's more about a change in the electromagnetic field that probably takes place when these predator-type things start moving in our reality. There's interdimensionals coming in or ETs, but it's a shift, and it's bumping up against our reality in a way that is shutting things down on our side. So it's an interesting thing. But anyways, so now I did also ask a question about people going missing of German descent, because that was something identified by David Paulides in his research. He did find a number of people that were either German or of German descent that were taken. And, for example, there were 5 men, all physicists of German descent, that had gone missing here in the United States. So I asked that question of Covert Disclosure, why so many people of German descent? And here is his answer.
I blame Hitler. I'm just kidding. I actually have no idea. It seems like most of the demographics that come up missing are usually a good mix of all nationalities. Of course, the nationality of the territory of the vanishing will always be slightly greater than other nationalities. For example, demographics local to the area would, by the law of averages, disappear more frequently than any visiting or tourist demographics.
So he didn't see any big pattern there. But I'm suspicious of that pattern because of what has happened in Antarctica and the rumors that have flown around about Nazis being there, as well as working with extraterrestrials. That, I could see, like you mentioned, humans and the ETs working together to kidnap people. And why wouldn't they take other German people that were very intelligent or highly trained in one area or another? It seems like they have some kind of a pact. And, I mean, look at Admiral Byrd and what happened in that whole Project High Jump. I mean, there's a lot that points to something going on between Nazis that escaped after the war and went there and had extraterrestrial friends that were helping them with their technology. And, they don't. This is also something I've been told by one of our guests, that they don't have the numbers to take over the world and institute a Fourth Reich, but they do have technology and they do have the help of ETs. So who knows? I mean, maybe there are a group of Nazi ET connections that are also taking these people, and they may be singling out Germans. I don't know. But he did not seem to know about that. So I'll move on to the next one. Why do most of the disappearances take place mid to late afternoon? All right, so now I've got to go back in my file here, and here is the answer.
The abductors generally know that daylight is a factor in rescue efforts. While darkness may not necessarily delay rescue or recovery efforts, it almost always hampers or hinders them.
Again, that makes a lot of logical sense that they would abduct people late afternoon. Nightfall comes quickly, and it does hamper rescue efforts. So that makes sense. My next question was, why do many of the disappearances take place in granite boulder fields? And here is his answer.
These are always cryptids, and it has to do with camouflage as well as the ability to quickly traverse the terrain.
Wow. So that could be, because they do have the ability to traverse that type of terrain, and could very well just be them that's inhabiting those boulder fields. And again, this is not particular to Bigfoot. This could be any cryptid group.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, let's talk about Bigfoot for a second. I don't think I've been studying Bigfoot since I was 16 years old, and I don't think there's anything malevolent to do with Bigfoot at all. I don't think if they're involved in this stuff, it's like with Stan Gordon in Pennsylvania. The stuff that he came across was a little disturbing, but I really don't think Bigfoot has much to do with any of this other than just being there, being what they are. And they are definitely interdimensional. We can talk about that later, because I've tried to follow.
I think they are. Yeah, I think they are interdimensional. And I know we've had Dr. J on the show, who is a psychologist who had a big experience, and very positive, with Bigfoot. And he does not identify them as the ones that are kidnapping people. He said it's something else that was left here by ETs, and they're quite vicious. but that's not the Bigfoot he knows. So yeah, I mean, Dr. J would definitely agree with you on that. So here's another question I asked: why are people with obvious disabilities or illnesses abducted? Because there are a long list of people like that have been taken. Here's his answer.
When individuals of this demographic are taken, it's almost always for research or food. People with disabilities, illnesses, or other such sickness are never taken as slaves, provided, of course, the abducting parties realize that before the abducting.
Yeah, so maybe that's what they're doing, research or something like that. But there's quite a high number of people with disabilities that are taken. And so here's another question. Why are some of the bodies found in an area that had been searched before? Because, as you know, that's one of the things that happens. These search parties go out, and they are arm in arm across quite a wide area, and they find nothing. They go back over the area, and then they find a body. So here's his answer.
Sometimes it's just an accident. Other times it's intentionally done to increase the chances that the person is never found because of the unlikelihood of the ground being searched twice in some instances.
Yep. So the other question that follows this one. Go ahead.
I didn't catch that. What did he say? I didn't quite catch that.
He said sometimes it's just an accident. Other times it is intentionally done to increase the chances that the person is never found because of the unlikelihood of the ground being searched twice in some instances. Yep. And then also I asked, why is the cause of death undetermined? Many of the people that are found dead, they end up with undetermined on their autopsy report. So my question was, all right, what is killing these people? And here is his answer to that.
The causes of death are almost always known, but when it comes to official documentation, the powers that be are much more likely to say undetermined rather than say anything hinting at the paranormal.
Well, that makes sense also, because, you know, they never want to hint at that. They never want to go down that road. But a lot of these deaths have been undetermined, the cause of death. And also, why do the disappearances happen in geographic clusters? And here's his answer.
Disappearances that happen in geographic clusters are almost always due to cryptids. Extraterrestrials usually space out their abductions geographically. Interdimensional abductions really know no boundaries as far as man-made boundaries go. It's the cryptids that have certain areas they come back to for hunting grounds, as they are typically the most geographically challenged of all the abductors.
Makes sense?
Yeah.
Did you hear that one? Or did you review that one? Because
makes
sense that the cryptids would stay in certain areas.
I obviously he's a very intelligent person, and well backgrounded. But I do my own research, and some of this stuff, I will agree with Stephen Greer. He's not that the extraterrestrials are not our enemies. There's something else. Because I haven't been able. I've talked to them. Done this picture language. So I sort of got to know them. And if they're I'm sure there's some truth to this, that like Dulce, that stuff that went on in Dulce was,
it was crazy.
I am sure there's truth to that. I mean, it's there's too many, back in the days when 20, 30 years ago, I was in on that with all of the researchers that were involved in it, and it's pretty weird. And then what's his name got his fingers shot off.
Yes.
So
and then he was murdered.
Yeah,
he
died
and
shortly.
He came out and started talking about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
They took him out,
yeah,
not the extraterrestrials, the government.
No, right, the government. Yeah, shortly after he died. So I don't know. Some of this stuff, I use my remote viewing abilities, and they are considerable, and try to probe some of this stuff. And a lot of it just doesn't make sense. I suspect that that there's so much evil on this planet that if extraterrestrials are involved in it, they're taking human form, because some of the stuff that humans are doing to humans is beyond evil.
It's true.
It's beyond evil. I mean, it's there's no word that can describe it. It's so sadistic and evil. So if any of those extraterrestrials are, I mean, they can find a lot of humans that would do their billing. They're willing, but
they're bidding. Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree.
Yeah. I mean, some of this stuff I studied. My brain can't comprehend it. I just can't understand it. It's so evil. I mean, it's so I really, being a farm boy from Maine, my poor old brain just can't deal with some of this stuff.
It's truly outside of our ability to understand when somebody can be that vicious towards a person or an animal. It just doesn't. There's no sense to make out of it. That's certainly for sure. I agree with you. Now, the last thing that I did, actually, it was two things I did with Covert Disclosure. I asked about specific cases. For example, there's two elderly men, experienced hunters. They disappeared separately in northeast New York. Tom Messick disappeared without a trace on November 15th, 2015. And Fred Drum disappeared on November 24th, 2015. Now, the FBI doesn't normally open cases on missing adults, but why did the FBI investigate these two cases? And here's his answer.
You have to ask yourself this question. If the case wasn't open on a missing adult, why was the case opened? The answer to that is to investigate the means by which the person disappeared, or finding the captor.
So that's what they're after. So to find out how they were taken and who, or if they could find the captor. And that's the reason they get involved. But there have been a number of cases that David has identified where the FBI has been involved or the Green Berets have been involved. They're not normally called into those situations. So they're obviously looking for those two things, maybe others. Then I also asked him about one of my favorite cases, in terms of, heartfelt case, is Stacy Ann Aris, who was 14 years old, disappeared in Yosemite, and this is over 30 years ago. The only thing the searchers ever found was a lens cap. Now, I worked with a team of mediums who thought that Stacy had accidentally passed through a portal and was unable to return, but may be able to return now. And I asked if he had any information on this case, but unfortunately he said he did not. So the next question that I asked was specific to people coming back. So I asked, do you know, are you aware of anyone who has returned from a portal or other dimension? And here's his answer.
I am. Depending on the dimension they come back from, sometimes their minds never recover. I won't say what facility, but there is a facility I'm aware of that conducts 3 to 4 portal experiments annually. The results with inanimate objects are generally successful, but the massive amount of energy and the fluctuations of that energy make experiments with organic material highly difficult. Most experiments with organic material are, let's say, horrifically unsuccessful.
I bet they are. You think back on some of the experiments we have heard about, and it sounds pretty bad. They don't come back either with their right mind, or they come back in caught in some other material. It's strange. And then I did ask also, do you have the technology to return them? And here's his answer. Quite interesting answer.
The technology exists, but the government and other entities that control the technology are very hesitant to even attempt to return individuals. It would be more than likely just returning a person with their mind scrambled, which basically creates loose ends and potential information leaks, etc., whether their minds are ruined or not.
Isn't that something? So they wouldn't return them.
Yeah.
They wouldn't want to return them and take a risk that they go blabbing about it, which could happen.
Right.
But whether they'd be believed or not is a totally different question.
Yeah,
So, anyways, the other question I asked was, do you have the technology to return them? And that's the one let's see. Okay, that's the one I just played. Yeah, so anyhow, very, very fascinating answers from Covert Disclosure. I did also ask him about the smiley face killers. And also I asked him about what happened in New Mexico at the observatory that was shut down and evacuated, but he did not have information on either one of those. So that's as far as we went with that. But then I did ask him another question about, is there an ET that you're really afraid of? Is there a cryptid that you're really afraid of? I got to find his answer here because I tapped it on at the very end, and he did send me an email with an answer to that question. Here it is. I thought this was great. Now, these were not recorded answers. These he just answered, like I said, in an email. So, there is a cryptid that has been given the moniker the draining race. Aside from demons, this creature is the stuff of nightmares. If you are inside the sphere of influence, it has a way of zapping your energy and willpower. I wouldn't call it an energy vampire because it doesn't absorb or take in what it drains. This creature is responsible for more than a few deaths. So that was his answer about a cryptid. And then I asked about, is there any particular ET race that you're concerned about? He said, I am most afraid of a race called the Letul, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing this right, Enjoy. The reason I'm fearful is because they need nothing, there's nothing really known about them. Oh my, okay. A single one was captured last year in the vicinity of the Appalachian Trail. We'd neither seen nor heard of this race prior to that. It was more likely at that time that this was just a variation of a known race. But, as it turned out, it was an all-new race. As for the appearance, picture a stereotypical gray alien, but with a concave face. Its appearance is so sinister as to make a traditional gray that it's put, I can't even read this, it's just so small. Where are my glasses? Oh my goodness. It's a stereotypical gray alien, but with a concave face. Its appearance is so similar to a traditional gray that's why initially it was thought that it was just an offhand of another type of a gray race, but it wasn't. So it was put into a holding facility where it made no attempt to communicate, nor did it eat or drink. After 4 days, it simply ceased all life functions. It was apparently like that. It just flipped a switch and ceased to be. That scares the hell out of me because that is the behavior of a hostile who is anticipating an interrogation or torture. That Letul, a completely unknown race, hostile intent. That absolutely terrifies me. So that was the last question I asked, and that was the last question Covert Disclosure answered. He's obviously very knowledgeable about the different types of races that they've encountered, and it sounds like there are a lot of them that I have never even heard of before. So it's very fascinating. Again, Covert Disclosure, thank you so much for answering those questions. It's been just a wonderful, wonderful evening going through all of your answers, and again, best wishes to you and all of what you're doing to help hopefully keep us all safe. So, Tom, let's go back to you. And you were talking about a guy from the CIA that you met who was telling you all kinds of things that you were very surprised to hear. So do tell. We want to hear what you know.
Well, there's some things I won't talk about, but I know there are bases here. I call them underground installations. And when I've been around here for 33 years, so I hear the rumors, and I've always said I hunt them on their turf. I've gone after them, because some people think I'm nuts, but that's how I've done a lot of things. So at any rate, a tunnel system was drilled through here about I guess probably 30 years ago, and it came through underneath Secret Canyon, and there was an enormous amount of extraterrestrial activity here at that time. And military types with M16s and machine guns and whatnot. And I had high level active military friends at the time, so I'd call them up. And I would describe the uniforms. They were all current U.S. military uniforms, except they had no insignia on them, none. So they would be stopping. They will be stopping people at trailheads and sticking M16s in their face, and say there's a military maneuvering going on behind us, and it's closed to the public right now. And one guy actually said, "Well, this is public land. I'm going that way," and he stuck the gun in his face and said, "You take one more step, and I'll pull the trigger." So they were serious.
My. Yeah, they certainly were.
Yeah, so this happened about 30 times in about a 10-year period. So there was extraterrestrial activity quite a bit. So I think maybe some of these underground installations are military and or extraterrestrial. They might be working together. There was
quite
a time.
possible.
So the tunnel system, I thought it only went from the Navajo Army Depot. It's a 5 mile by 6 miles, and it's a storage depot for munitions, everything, and it is a storage facility for nuclear weapons, because there was a guy across the street that watched the traffic coming in out of the base that had been in the military, and he said, "Oh, definitely, they were there's nuclear stuff going in and out." So anyway, so the base. What the CIA guy told me was a lot to do with that, and I really probably better stay away from that. But he told me about a base that was up there that was real. I'll call it an underground installation. It was almost part of the Navajo Army Depot that I never knew about. But he said, "Oh yeah."
What were they doing there?
I don't know.
What were they doing?
I don't know. But the tunnel system went from Jerome, Arizona, up on the mountain. Right, I can look at it from right here where I'm living. Goes down through, right across, underneath the Bradshaw Ranch, through the Secret Canyon, up to the Navajo Army Depot. And this guy called me one day. He says, "Hey Tom, I have a friend in Congress. He's a congressman, and he said I want you to tell Tom Dongo something, but don't tell him who I am." So he said, "Tell Tom Dongo he's close, but the tunnel system does not end at the Navajo Army Depot. It goes all the way to Las Vegas and then to Area 51. It starts in Area 51. And they since, and underneath Jerome, Arizona, there's 71 miles of old copper tunnels. And they're mostly dry. So anything could exist down there. And 4,200 feet straight down, they hit an enormous, that's 2,000 feet lower than where I live right here. They hit an enormous pocket of gold and silver. And it's probably dry. It's probably bone dry, so anything could exist down there. So the tunnel system went to Jerome, and then about 5 years later, it went straight west, right up through the Verde Canyon, because people could hear the drilling under their houses. Our housing was shaking. These huge drilling machines were and the drilling machines were probably hours. Now they have nuclear drilling machines that actually melt their way through rock, so they wouldn't be as noisy. So anyway,
but again, I know what everybody wants to know, because we know about the tunnels. We've heard about the tunnels from a bunch of people who were there when they had started drilling, I guess, to create these tunnels, and they were all connected. But again, nobody seems to be able to tell us what's going on there. I mean, at the very least, what we can surmise is that somebody like Covert Disclosure 441, that somebody like that is in one of those installations where they have cryptids and ETs, and maybe that's where they are, is underground, and it would make sense that they be underground. So maybe things like that are going on underneath, but I'm waiting to hear. Is this what they're doing? What are they doing in those tunnels?
Well, a lot has changed. Should I talk about this? I have high-level, mostly retired military friends in cosmic top-secret clearances and that sort of thing. But a lot of these things have been abandoned. I doubt that the tunnel systems have, but a lot of it has been. And that Sandia base outside of Albuquerque, New Mexico, it was an alien base, and it's empty now.
Empty. Okay.
And it's and it's theirs. It's a friend of mine, a high-ranking military person, went in there, and he said you could eat off the floors. It's so clean. They sanitize it so much. So, for years we heard rumors about an alien base in Sandia Peak, and it was true. But it's gone now. It's there, but it's empty. So.
Well, here's the thing. So then what you're saying is that these high-level people were alluding to the fact, or maybe they came right out and said that they were working with ETs. Our government has been working with ETs. Well, yeah, of course they have. I've been. I think it was Frank Salta. He was on Greer's the first panel, and I believe he passed away a few years ago, but he has said that he was friends of mine. So he said, come on, we all know in the military intelligence networks that the U.S. government has been dealing face-to-face with extraterrestrials since about 1943 and probably back into the 30s. We all know it. But it's compartmentalized, so we don't have the whole picture. None of us do. So what we know now is probably minuscule to what is actually going on. And I went to one of Linda Moulton Howe's talks, and she said that she talked to some people in the Pentagon, and an officer said, I'm going to talk about this. I'm sick and tired of not talking about it, and I'm going to tell the public what I know. So they took him, by the hand and led him into a colonel's office, I guess it was, and he said, sit down, son. So we understand what you're talking about, but let me put it this way. We will never tell the American people what we know about extraterrestrials. Never. So that's the last word on that. And that's what a little bit I've been able to get to. The rest of it, I don't think I want to know, because some of these beings are millions of years ahead of us. And as far as I know, there are about 15 races of human extraterrestrials, and probably around 135 total. And the others are humanoid. So you can just about imagine, if you took a bunch of people in a room, 135 different races of people. Some would be friendly, some would be enemies, some would be real well-mannered, some would be real hate everything, Good,
So that's the way. Yeah. But I've had friends. I've had, I hear things, from high-level people. And
well, tell us something we don't already know. Tell us something that we don't already know, because my audience. Very smart, very much on the leading edge with all this stuff. A lot of them themselves are involved in covert operations. So tell us something that we don't know. We know that the government's been working with ETs, and I love what you just said, that the guy said they'll never tell the public what's really going on. I think that's true. But tell us something more. Tell us something new about all of this.
Well, David Jacobs says that the hybrids are in a position where they could probably take over this planet now. And I know for a fact that 50 years ago, our government was working with praying mantis, human praying mantis, in a laboratory. And the people that told me that said they were pretty weird, but they were half human, so we work. They were easy to work with. And I've had another friend that met extraterrestrials, had a contact with extraterrestrials, and they said that the praying mantis creatures are the most intelligent living things in the universe. So it's pretty interesting.
Very interesting. We've heard about the praying mantis, and David Jacobs is great. He's been on the show a couple of times. We love David, and we agree with him. We think that it's quite possible that they could take over the world, and we wouldn't have a clue as to what to do. But with all of that, it's really a shame that our government has to be so adversarial towards us about what's going on with ETs. I mean, I think it would be very important to know more about this. And I know you're saying some things you don't want to know. I can understand that. But at the same time, our government is working with ETs. And clearly, from Covert Disclosure, we're learning they're also very much involved with all kinds of cryptids and identifying other species that are here as well. So there's a whole effort that's been going on, whether it's in the tunnels or above ground. It's been happening for a long period of time. I mean, 50 years ago, you said, is when you were aware of the praying mantis hybrids that they were working with. So, we're talking about a long history that our government has had with being involved with ETs and interdimensionals, although I have a feeling, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. I have a feeling that the interdimensionals are a lot more difficult for our government to deal with. I just have that feeling. And some of this is ET, some of it's interdimensional. So I think the interdimensionals really make them nervous. That's my guess. What do you think?
Well, I like all this stuff to make people aware is going on right now, because we need to be shaken up real bad, because there's things we need to know that are beyond our reality, and because I've had glimpses of it being a remote viewer, and we've really got to be more conscious of these things that are around us. So I think we're surrounded by beings. In fact, I just saw something the other day that there's a new kind of creature they discovered. It's from space. It's like they say, out there in space. Space is not empty. It's full of living creatures. It's like an ocean. It's full of living creatures. Right. And and that's true. So if we don't, I've studied this a lot, and that what they don't want, all these factions that having humans bickering and squabbling and infighting, they're trying to keep us separated. They do not want us to think as one. That's in the Rockefeller papers. The one
You're
thing.
Right.
What are they doing? Yeah, no, and they're doing it perfect right now. No, I mean it couldn't be any worse now. Everybody's squabbling. So the one thing they want to keep us from doing is getting critical thinkers together and thinking as one. They're scared of that. And I've got the papers here somewhere where the Rockefeller papers talk about that. So they're gonna do their best to keep humans bickering and squabbling, so we never get together. And it's working perfectly right now with Soros and all these other people paying millions of dollars to let murderers out of prison. District attorneys are being paid to release murderers.
Yeah.
Well,
so you see what's happening. I mean, people, like you're talking about critical thinkers. And if you know what the Communist Manifesto is and you've read it, then you look around you and you see that the Democrats are trying to institutionalize that within our country.
Yep.
And so it is awful what's going on. And yet people are acting like that's the way it should be, that some people are. But I don't think they're in the majority in this country. I really don't. I think they have the biggest mouths. I think they have the biggest mouthpieces. But I don't think they're the majority. If you look at how many people voted against this kind of stuff and for someone who would, again, have our country be great, then you're looking at a much greater majority there than you are with all of this Marxism, communism, and allowing China to take over. Now, you know what's happening in Cuba right now. You know what's happening in South Africa. And people are saying this is all coming from China. Maybe. I wouldn't doubt it. However, again, it's people who are standing up. It's like you're saying, you have to look beyond. You have to use your critical thinking to see what's happening around you and take a stand for what you believe in. If you want your freedom, or if you want to be under communist rule, I guess, then that's where you want to be. I don't. I'm not in favor of that.
Well, we're losing. We're losing more of our rights all the time.
Yeah, it's very frightening. But I heard. Did you hear the Biden administration wants to have a deal with phone companies so they can spy on all of our text messages and actually make corrections about anybody talking about the vaccines in a way they don't like. Now, what in the world? That is absolutely insane. I can't imagine anybody going along with that. But yet, I guess there are a number of people that are brainwashed enough to think that's cool. I don't know.
Well, Well, you look at the way people think these days, and 10 years ago, we would have thought it would be impossible for the people to be going along with the stuff that's going along now. I mean, every day, my brain just smoke comes out of my ears because of what people are putting up with. That's just and they are sheep. I mean, it's a herd of sheep. When this was about 40 years ago. Maybe 50 years ago, it was a think tank, and they were telling, all these smart people, they get together, and they say, well, we'll do this. The sheep, meaning us, will go this way. Then we'll do this, and the sheep will run that way. Then we'll do this, and so they were planning for what they were going to do the next 20 or 30 years. We'll do this, and then they'll do that, and they'll react to this, and then we'll do something over here, and then they'll run the other way, and I'm going, man, are we that stupid? Are we really that stupid? That people can't figure it out. Look at this, and wait a minute, we're being manipulated, and and pushed.
And it's important, as you brought out, to keep looking beyond all of that and not allow yourself to be brainwashed into a certain way of thinking or going along with something that doesn't feel true in your heart. So, I think there's a lot of people get triggered very easily. They start digging their heels in. They don't want to look at the facts about Democrat-run cities and different crime rates going up super high. I mean, it's just a fact. You don't have to get triggered over it, but you can see where something has shifted in consciousness. It is a dumbing down, and it's very, very scary to watch. I mean, I questioned this. I wondered if people were being brainwashed during newscasts because, again, now it was banned. Remember, subliminal messaging was banned in commercials. And they weren't allowed to use it in commercials. But I don't know if it was ever banned in newscasts. I have to wonder, when I encounter people who I've known to be very smart, suddenly go into a posture that is so nonsensical, I'm like, where did this come from? And it looks to me like somebody's been brainwashing them. But how? That's the question. How has this happened? And a lot of people watch the news. I wonder if there was subliminal messaging going on during newscasts. That's just a question I have. I'm not saying it did or it didn't. I just question, where did this brainwashing come from? Some of us were affected by it more so than others. But it's very concerning. It's very upsetting to see the division and these people, shaking the jar of the two different color ants, and the ants are going at it. But who's shaking the jar? So you know that old story. But you're right. But again, I think with what we started tonight, our discussion, with learning more about cryptids, learning more about ETs. They've been here, obviously, for thousands of years. Ancient Aliens has it right. And, we need to again, get very savvy about it and learn what we can from the ones that are good. Now, I happen to agree with you. I don't think the ETs are against us. I really don't. I think if they ever wanted to take over the planet, they could have done it long before this. However, I do think there may be races that we wouldn't feel comfortable with for whatever reason, whether they have abducted humans, which they probably have, and what they've done to them. We wouldn't be comfortable with it. Same with cryptids. There's good and bad there. We've even heard people talk about the fairy realm in the same way. There's good and bad there. So we have to have our own discernment about these. But that's why I guess I'm very grateful to Covert Disclosure, because he's being willing to talk about what he knows. And he's also said, he doesn't know everything, but he does have some good information. But tell us more. Like, what do you think my audience has not heard before? What do you think that they'd be interested to hear about what you know and what your CIA friend knows?
Oh, boy. You got a good point there. People that are really aware, that are more our family type of researchers, it's hard. I wish I could teach remote viewing to everybody, so everybody there would be no secrets if everybody was a remote viewer, because I see everything completely different than other people do, and it's awesome. It's incredible. So I go to, McMonagle. I was standing right beside him years ago in a convention, UFO convention. And I had been going on to alien spacecraft, visiting them, and so I thought I was crazy. I thought I had to be insane. So and McMonagle, who was at the time, I think he was the top remote viewer for the U.S. And we were in a group of 6 or 8 people in a circle, and he started talking about, I love to tell this story. He said that he went near alien spacecraft, and there are thousands of them out there. They're very easy to find. And they threatened him. They said, don't come any closer. And I learned early on that you get near you come near an alien spacecraft, and they warn you, stay away. You stay away, because if you go closer, the hostility really amplifies. So anyway, he kept going, and went onto the ship. And they grabbed him and put him in a cage and wouldn't let him go. I found it kind of humorous, actually. Here's a guy who's been doing 2 tours in Vietnam, and they wouldn't let him go. He said
he's a great soldier. Yeah.
He was terrified. So I'm thinking, oh, you dummy! I learned that early on. If they threaten you, if they warn you to stay away, stay away.
They mean business, right?
They're not fooling around. And I know they wouldn't kill you. I'm sure of that, but they would make it real uncomfortable. So anyway, after a long while, they let him go, because his psyche was up there and his body was down here, so he was starting to get really freaked out. So when he said that, I thought to myself, I'm really not crazy. And I've done so many other things like that got validated by somebody else, down the road, that was much more qualified than I am. So I've had quite an adventure. I'm getting a little, I'm going to be 77 next year, so I'm getting a little old now for some of this stuff. I just don't have the energy to do it anymore.
But for this stuff.
Yeah. But it's been a heck of an adventure, I'll tell you that. I've enjoyed it.
Yes, I know you've met some really fabulous people. I mean, Joe being one of them. I've known Joe for over, 30 years. So, and he is a very talented remote viewer, extremely talented. I remember being amazed watching what he could do, the photographs the things that he saw that he could draw that bore out, and also finding missing people. He was very good at helping with all of those things. Very talented man. And a great
well,
subject,
like
you mentioned.
Yeah, I won't work on murders anymore. I just flat refuse. I'm not interested. I'm not doing it. But I've solved, I think, about 5 murders now. And, using remote viewing. But the thing about it is, you have to experience it. You have to be there and feel the person being killed. Feel you can see everything that's going on, and I will not ever do it again. It's so difficult. But that's one of the, and you spontaneously see things, and that's one of the downsides of remote viewing. But it's also very, very, very interesting. If you can use it, that ability for that, what else can you do with it? And I've traveled around the universe, and I'm not very good at going into the future. It's really the future for about 50 years is a mess. After that, it's pretty golden age kind of a thing. But I'm good at going into the past. I love to go back to 1,000 years ago to an English village or something like that, and just sit there and watch them and smell all the frankincense.
That must be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun.
I think, there are a lot of remote viewing courses out there. I know we have a guest coming on the show in a few weeks who also offers one for free, and it is a great way to learn more about our realities, and it's not just one thing. So it does help to expand the mind and also to change how you see your reality. I know that when I just want to mention that when George and Becky and I, and also Helene Olsen when she was alive, did this work with the portals, we learned a couple of things. We learned how to open portals, and we could go through them. And when we did, everything would turn blue, dark blue around us, and we would turn blue.
Right.
However, when George and I went looking for some of the missing people, at times we encountered a red portal. Everything would turn red, and that was very uncomfortable. And then when we had the gentleman from ESETI Ranch on the show, and he talked about when UFOs showed up and they had red around them, they learned to stay away from them. And it was right in alignment with what we found in doing our American Skull group, where we went looking and we encountered red portals. It was really tough work. And I can understand what you're saying about when you go to help solve a murder, you're stuck with those images. We've had so many people on the show, very talented mediums that have said, and psychics who said they won't do those cases as well for the same reason. And also because sometimes you just can't get those images out of your head. They're there forever.
No.
So we understand that. But in doing the work with American Skull that I did with George, Becky, and Helene, it was very powerful. We were able to pull in photographs of interdimensionals and ETs, and it was exciting work, very exciting work. But the red portals was, oh, wow. That was something I don't know if I'd want to do again. The blue ones were great, but the red ones were scary.
Yeah, I've seen people I've seen people disappear into portals. I've watched them disappear, and I've watched humanoids on the Bradshaw Ranch. We watched the 7 dogs chased it, and it right by a yucca plant. It disappeared. It went through a portal, and so the next day we were out there sticking our arms through it. Did you see? Did my arm disappear? This kind of stuff, And so it closed up or whatever behind it. But getting back to I've tried to remote view, and I don't know if any remote viewer has ever been successful. But I've tried to follow. Especially the kids that have disappeared in the national parks. The 3 kids in front of them suddenly they're gone. I've tried to follow them. Recently, I found about a 5-year-old boy. So I got right behind him because I knew he was going to disappear. And when he did, I went with him, and we were going up. Somebody asked me, were you going down or were you going up? I said, we were going up fast. And it was like somebody slammed my brakes on. We were going at extreme speeds, and it's like somebody slammed my brakes on, and I just came to a complete stop. And I was told, this is as far as you go. This is the barrier, and I couldn't see anything after that. So that's happened 2 or 3 times when I've tried that. So I don't know of any other remote viewer that's got any. I've never heard of anybody getting further than that.
I don't think they have, because I know, David has talked about the fact that psychics, mediums, and remote viewers have not been successful in finding these disappeared people. So nobody knows why they haven't been successful, but I have a thought on that. I think it's because they're not used to changing dimensions, and that's what's happening here. This is a very different change in dimension than, say, going to the other side of the veil and talking to a dead person. This is so different than that. And I think that's why people have trouble. Now, when George and I went looking for some of the guys that were missing, we did see a Nazi involvement and an ET involvement together.
Yeah.
And they were doing experiments on removing people's souls. That's what it looked like to us. And
boy. Yeah. Well,
but again, you understand what that is, and it's and we saw them putting them all in these grids. It was a really disturbing sight to watch.
Yeah.
And but again, I can see where remote viewers, psychics, and mediums would not be able to make those journeys. It's not a linear journey at all. It's almost like you go sideways. But very interesting stuff. And again, I know David is always looking for people who can help him and give him solid information on what has happened to these people. He's always been open to that. Although he himself makes no determinations on what it is, he's open to it. So you ever come across, an answer, you should reach out to David and share it with him. I'm sure he'd be very grateful. Yeah.
Well, when you were talking about, I know we're almost out of time, but real quick, I felt a ghost near me because I can talk to ghosts. It's weird. And anyway, I asked him what was wrong. He said, "I'm afraid of the light." And so it's a long story, but I said, "Well, I took him by the arm and I said, let's go into the light." So I had to kind of pull him into the light. But what an experience that was! We were going up to these multi layers of colors, faster and faster and faster. We got into a blue layer, and we stopped. And a voice said, "This is as far as you can go." And I looked at him, and he was gone. But what a trip that was! That was,
So that again, you reached the outer barrier. Yeah, that's so interesting, Tom. Goodness me! Well, you've had a lifetime of this, which is very exciting, and you've got all your books, which can be found on Amazon, right?
Oh yeah, Merging Dimensions is my big one. I'm pushing now. Merging Dimensions. It's Amazon is the only place. All bookstores. Merging Dimensions.
Excellent. Well, congratulations on all of your books and your newest one too. And I'm so glad you were able to jump on the show with me tonight. This has been an absolute pleasure talking to you and having you co-host with me and go through all these questions and answers and share some of your personal experiences, which are tremendous, just tremendous. So thank you so much. I hope you come back. This has been great fun.
Oh, I will, yeah. Well, I've been telling my audiences for years, the weirder it is, the better I like it.
Well, you can count on weird here, that's for sure. We love weird. So, Tom, thanks again. And everybody, we're going to be back again next week with another great show. And until then, we will see you on the Blue Highway. Good night, everyone.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. Tune in next week for another radio adventure with Supernatural.